Same income, different outcomes. Rich versus broke. Picture two college roommates who graduate with identical business degrees, land jobs at the same company making exactly $75,000 annually, and move to the same city with identical living costs. Fast forward 20 years, and one is financially secure with substantial savings and investment accounts, while the other is still stressed about monthly bills despite earning significantly more money through career advancement. How does this happen? How do people with nearly identical starting points and similar income trajectories end up in completely different financial situations? The answer isn't luck, secret investment knowledge, or family money. It's three critical mistakes that keep people financially struggling regardless of income level, versus three habits that build wealth systematically over time. Here's what might shock you. 1/3 of Americans earning over $200,000 annually report living paycheck to paycheck. The habits that keep someone broke at $50,000 are exactly the same ones that keep someone broke at $200,000. The numbers are just bigger. Understanding these 6 key financial behaviors explains why income level doesn't determine financial outcomes and reveals practical strategies anyone can implement starting today. If you want to understand what separates financial success from struggle regardless of salary level, comment financial habits below. Let me show you the first mistake that traps people at every income level. Mistake number 1. Lifestyle inflation. Lifestyle inflation represents one of the most common barriers to wealth building because it feels completely natural and justified when it happens. You work hard, get promoted, and receive a well-deserved salary increase. Of course, you should enjoy some improvements in your living situation. However, the trap occurs when every dollar of increased income immediately flows toward lifestyle upgrades rather than building financial security. The pattern typically unfolds predictably. Someone earning $50,000 annually receives a raise to $60,000, providing approximately $650 additional monthly income after taxes. Initially, this feels like substantial breathing room that could solve many financial pressures. However, within months, that extra money disappears into a nicer apartment, a newer car lease, premium grocery choices, additional subscriptions, and more frequent dining out. Each individual upgrade seems reasonable and affordable within the context of the higher income. Moving from a studio to a one-bedroom apartment improves quality of life. Replacing an unreliable car with dependable transportation reduces stress. Eating better food and enjoying occasional restaurant meals enhances daily satisfaction. None of these choices appears problematic in isolation. The mathematical problem emerges when all these small improvements collectively consume the entire income increase, leaving the person with the same monthly cash flow despite earning significantly more money. They return to feeling financially stretched, just at a higher income level, creating frustration that their hard work and career advancement didn't improve their financial position. This pattern repeats at every income level. People earning $200,000 annually can feel just as financially pressured as those earning $50,000 if their expenses expand proportionally with their income growth. High earners often face additional pressure from professional expectations, social circles, and geographic locations that normalize expensive lifestyle choices. However, lifestyle inflation isn't inherently wrong. Some improvements genuinely enhance life quality, health, or professional effectiveness. The key involves making conscious choices about which upgrades provide lasting value versus those driven by social expectations or temporary satisfaction. Spending additional income on better healthcare, professional development, or quality items that last longer often proves worthwhile. Automatically upgrading everything to match a new income level typically doesn't. Here's your strategic approach. When receiving income increases, pause before making spending decisions and calculate what banking 50 to 75% of the raise could accomplish over time. Someone who banks $400 monthly from a $650 raise could potentially accumulate $100,000 over 20 years through investment growth. While lifestyle upgrades provide temporary satisfaction, but build no lasting financial security. Consider implementing a lifestyle inflation budget that allows conscious improvements while protecting wealth-building capacity. You might decide to spend $200 of a $650 raise on quality of life improvements, while banking $450 for investments and emergency savings. Most importantly, remember that building wealth requires balancing current enjoyment with future security, rather than choosing between extremes of deprivation or indulgence. Strategic lifestyle choices enable both present satisfaction and long-term financial freedom when approached with awareness rather than automatic spending increases. Mistake number 2, the debt trap. Consumer debt creates a mathematical headwind that makes wealth building exponentially more difficult, not just because of interest payments, but because debt obligations fundamentally alter your financial options and decision-making capacity. When significant portions of your income are used to service debt payments, you lose the financial flexibility needed to take advantage of opportunities or weather unexpected challenges. Consider someone earning $75,000 annually who carries typical American debt loads: a $400 car payment, $200 in minimum credit card payments, $300 student loan payment, and perhaps a $150 personal loan payment. Before considering savings, investments, or discretionary spending, they're sending $1,150 monthly to various lenders, over $12,600 annually, that could otherwise build wealth. Compare this to someone with an identical income but zero debt. That debt-free person has an additional $12,600 annually available for emergency savings, retirement contributions, or investment opportunities. Over 20 years, consistently investing that amount at 7% returns could potentially accumulate to over $500,000, while the debt-burdened person spent the same money eliminating obligations with no lasting financial benefit. However, the opportunity cost extends beyond just the monthly payments. Debt changes your fundamental relationship with money by forcing defensive rather than offensive financial strategies. When unexpected money arrives, bonuses, tax refunds, inheritance, or windfalls, people carrying high-interest debt face pressure to pay down balances rather than invest for growth. This creates a psychological trap where debt obligations consume financial windfalls that could otherwise accelerate wealth building. Someone receiving a $5,000 bonus who carries credit card debt at 20% interest rates should logically pay down the debt for guaranteed 20% returns. Meanwhile, someone without debt can invest that same $5,000 for potential long-term growth that compounds over decades. The emotional burden proves equally significant. Debt payments create ongoing financial stress that affects sleep, relationships, and career decisions. People carrying substantial debt often feel trapped in their current jobs because they cannot afford income disruption, even temporarily. This limits career advancement opportunities, entrepreneurial ventures, or geographic moves that might improve long-term earning potential. Here's your debt evaluation framework. Calculate your total monthly debt payments as a percentage of your take-home income. If this exceeds 20%, debt likely prevents meaningful wealth building by consuming money that could otherwise compound through investments. Prioritize eliminating high-interest debt before focusing on investment accounts, as guaranteed debt payoff often provides better returns than uncertain market gains. Credit cards charging 18 to 25% interest rates typically exceed what diversified investments can reliably generate. Consider debt consolidation or balance transfer strategies that reduce interest rates while maintaining aggressive payoff timelines. The goal involves eliminating debt efficiently rather than just managing minimum payments indefinitely. Most importantly, avoid replacing paid-off debt with new obligations that perpetuate the cycle. Building wealth requires breaking free from the debt treadmill, rather than just upgrading to more expensive monthly payments that maintain financial stress at higher income levels. Mistake number 3. Financial unconsciousness. Most people operate with surprising ignorance about their actual spending patterns, creating financial blind spots that prevent wealth building regardless of income level. They know their salary and major fixed expenses like rent or mortgage payments, but everything else becomes a blur of card swipes, online purchases, and cash transactions that collectively consume hundreds or thousands of dollars monthly without conscious awareness. This financial unconsciousness affects people across all income levels. Someone earning $150,000 annually might confidently estimate they spend $300 monthly on food, when actual tracking reveals $800 disappearing into restaurants, coffee shops, delivery apps, and impulse grocery purchases. The gap between perceived and actual spending often shocks people when they finally measure their financial reality rather than relying on assumptions. The problem compounds because modern payment methods, credit cards, digital wallets, automatic subscriptions create psychological distance between spending decisions and their financial impact. Swiping a card or tapping a phone feels different from counting cash, making it easier to lose track of cumulative spending throughout each month. Small purchases prove particularly deceptive because each individual transaction feels insignificant while its collective impact becomes substantial. A $5 coffee, $12 lunch, $25 online purchase, and $40 dinner out might each seem reasonable, but together they represent $82 in a single day. Repeated regularly, this pattern consumes over $20,400 monthly, enough to fund substantial emergency savings or retirement contributions. However, the issue extends beyond just tracking dollars. Financial unconsciousness prevents people from making strategic decisions about spending priorities. Someone might stress about whether they can afford a $2,000 vacation while unconsciously spending the same amount on scattered purchases that provide minimal lasting satisfaction or value. This awareness gap also affects major financial decisions. People often focus intensely on negotiating mortgage rates or comparing insurance policies while ignoring ongoing spending patterns that have a greater long-term impact on their financial outcomes. Saving $100 monthly on insurance provides less benefit than redirecting $500 in unconscious spending toward wealth building. Here's your awareness development strategy. Track every expense for 30 days using whatever method feels sustainable. Apps, spreadsheets, or written logs. The goal involves measurement rather than immediate restriction, as awareness often naturally leads to better spending decisions without forced deprivation. Categorize spending into fixed necessities, conscious choices, and unconscious purchases to identify where money disappears without providing proportional value or satisfaction. Many people discover they're spending substantial amounts on subscriptions, convenience purchases, or impulse buying that they don't really value. Most importantly, use tracking data to make conscious decisions about spending priorities rather than just trying to cut everything. Understanding where your money goes enables strategic choices about which expenses provide genuine value versus those driven by habit, convenience, or unconscious consumption patterns that don't align with your actual preferences or financial goals. Habit number 1, understanding compound growth power. Wealthy people intuitively understand that money invested today becomes exponentially more valuable than the same amount invested years later, not because of inflation, but because compound growth requires time to demonstrate its mathematical power. This time, the arbitrage principle explains why people who start investing modest amounts in their 20s often accumulate more wealth than those who wait until their 40s to invest larger sums. The mathematical reality proves counterintuitive to most people's expectations about catching up through higher contributions. Consider Sarah, who invests $3,000 annually from age 25 to 35, just 10 years of contributions totaling $30,000. At age 35, she stops contributing entirely, but leaves her money invested, Jessica waits until age 35 to begin investing, but then contributes $6,000 annually for 30 years until age 65, totaling $180,000 in contributions. Assuming 7% average annual returns, Sarah's account grows to approximately $840,000 by age 65, while Jessica's reaches about $610,000, despite contributing 6 times more money over 3 times longer. The 10-year head start Sarah gained proves more valuable than Jessica's doubled contribution rate and extended timeline, because compound growth amplifies early contributions more powerfully than later ones. This occurs because compound interest works on increasingly larger base amounts over time. Sarah's early contributions have 30 to 40 years to compound, while Jessica's final contributions have only 1 to 2 years. The money Sarah invested at age 25 experiences 4 decades of growth, while Jessica's contributions at age 60 barely have time to grow beyond their initial values. However, most people delay investing because starting feels overwhelming when they're establishing careers, paying student loans, or adjusting to adult financial responsibilities. The amounts that seem meaningful for wealth building, $500 to $1,000 monthly, feel impossible when you're earning entry-level salaries. Meanwhile, smaller amounts like $100 to $200 monthly feel insignificant and hardly worth the effort. This psychological barrier prevents people from capitalizing on their most valuable wealth-building years. Someone who waits until they can afford to invest $500 monthly might miss 5 to 10 years of compound growth that would ultimately prove more valuable than the higher contribution amounts they eventually achieve. Here's your time arbitrage strategy. Calculate what modest monthly investments could become over 20 to 30 years using compound interest calculators. Understanding that $200 monthly from age 25 to 65 could potentially grow to over $525,000 helps motivate starting with achievable amounts rather than waiting for perfect financial conditions. Start with whatever amount feels sustainable, even $50 to $100 monthly, and focus on building the habit rather than optimizing the amount. Contribution increases become easier as income grows, but establishing consistent investment behavior proves more valuable than perfect initial amounts. Most importantly, remember that compound growth requires both time and market exposure, meaning starting early with diversified investments typically proves more effective than waiting to time markets perfectly or researching optimal investment strategies that delay actual participation. All investments involve risks, including potential loss of principal, and past performance doesn't predict future results. Consider consulting qualified financial professionals before making investment decisions. Habit number 2, pay yourself first. Most people approach saving backwards by paying bills, covering expenses, buying whatever they want or need, then hoping to save whatever remains at month's end. This strategy virtually guarantees minimal savings because there's rarely meaningful money left after addressing immediate spending opportunities and perceived necessities. Wealthy people reverse this equation by immediately transferring predetermined amounts to savings and investments the moment income arrives, then figuring out how to live comfortably on what remains. This fundamental shift, paying your future self before paying anyone else, including your current self, removes the willpower component from wealth building while forcing creative resource management that often improves overall financial efficiency. When you know that $1,000 of your $5,000 monthly income is automatically unavailable for spending, you naturally find ways to live well on the remaining $4,000, because you must. The psychological transformation proves as valuable as the mathematical benefits. Traditional saving requires constant decision-making about whether you can afford to set money aside this month, given current expenses, upcoming purchases, or unexpected costs. These ongoing decisions create mental fatigue and provide numerous opportunities to rationalize spending money instead of saving it. Automated saving eliminates these decision points by treating wealth building like any other fixed expense that gets paid regardless of other financial pressures. You wouldn't skip your rent payment because you wanted to buy something else. The same mindset applies to automated transfers that treat your future financial security as a non-negotiable priority. However, successful implementation requires a realistic assessment of your actual expenses versus discretionary spending to avoid creating unsustainable financial pressure. Someone earning $4,000 monthly who automatically saves $1,500 while having $3,000 in essential expenses will face constant stress and likely abandon the system. Starting with 10 to 15% of income often proves more sustainable than attempting aggressive savings rates that require dramatic lifestyle changes. The timing matters significantly. Transfers should occur immediately after paychecks arrive, before you mentally allocate the money to other purposes. Most people find automatic transfers on payday more effective than trying to save money that sits in checking accounts throughout the month, creating ongoing temptation to spend it. Here's your implementation strategy. Calculate your essential monthly expenses: housing, utilities, food, transportation, insurance, and minimum debt payments. Add a reasonable buffer for miscellaneous expenses, then set up automatic transfers for everything above this amount plus buffer. Start conservatively to ensure sustainability, rather than attempting maximum savings rates that might prove unsustainable. Choose separate accounts for different purposes: emergency fund, retirement contributions, and general investment accounts to create psychological barriers against spending money designated for specific goals. Money that's physically separated feels less available for impulse purchases than amounts sitting in easily accessible checking accounts. Most importantly, treat automated savings like a bill that must be paid rather than a goal you hope to achieve. This mindset shift makes wealth building feel inevitable rather than dependent on perfect spending discipline or ideal financial conditions that rarely occur. Remember that this strategy works by forcing adaptation rather than requiring perfection. Your lifestyle will naturally adjust to available spending money when wealth building happens automatically, rather than competing with every other financial desire for attention and resources. Habit number 3: assets versus liabilities. Thinking wealthy people approach every significant purchase by asking a fundamental question that most people never consider. Will this make me money or cost me money over time? This assets versus liabilities framework transforms spending decisions from emotional impulses into strategic choices that either build or drain long-term financial capacity. An asset puts money in your pocket over time through appreciation, income generation, or cost savings. A liability takes money out of your pocket through depreciation, maintenance costs, or ongoing expenses. This distinction sounds academic until you apply it to real purchasing decisions, where the long-term financial impact often contradicts the immediate emotional appeal. Consider two people addressing their transportation needs. Person A purchases a $40,000 new SUV with financing, creating a $650 monthly payment plus insurance, maintenance, and rapid depreciation. This vehicle is a liability that drains approximately $8,000 to $10,000 annually from their financial capacity. Person B buys a reliable $12,000 used car with cash, then invests the $650 monthly payment they would have made into diversified stock market funds. After 7 years, Person A owns a vehicle worth perhaps $15,000, but has spent over $60,000 in total costs. Person B owns a car worth maybe $5,000, but has accumulated roughly $75,000 in investments that continue growing. Same transportation function, dramatically different financial outcomes based on asset versus liability thinking. This mindset becomes particularly powerful when applied to housing decisions. Someone might choose between a $500,000 house requiring a large mortgage versus a $350,000 house that enables earlier payoff and additional investment capacity. A smaller house might feel like settling, but the wealth-building difference over 20 years could exceed $200,000 through reduced interest payments and increased investment contributions. However, assets versus liabilities thinking requires balance to avoid becoming obsessive about every purchase. Some expenses provide genuine value through health, relationships, education, or quality of life improvements that justify their costs, even when they don't generate financial returns. The framework helps distinguish between conscious choices about valuable expenses versus unconscious spending that provides minimal benefit. Here's your decision-making framework. Before major purchases, calculate the total cost of ownership over time, including financing, maintenance, insurance, and opportunity costs. Compare this against alternative choices that might free up money for wealth-building investments. Ask whether each significant purchase moves you toward or away from financial independence, rather than just whether you can afford the monthly payment. This longer-term perspective often reveals that modest lifestyle choices enable substantial wealth accumulation over decades. Most importantly, remember that this thinking should enhance rather than restrict your life by ensuring your money supports your genuine priorities rather than disappearing into unconscious consumption that provides minimal lasting satisfaction while preventing financial security. The difference between financial success and struggle isn't determined by income level. It's shaped by 3 critical mistakes versus 3 wealth-building habits that anyone can implement regardless of their salary. Avoiding lifestyle inflation, eliminating debt burdens, and developing spending awareness prevent the financial traps that keep high earners living paycheck to paycheck. Meanwhile, understanding compound growth timing, automating wealth building through paying yourself first, and thinking strategically about assets versus liabilities creates the foundation for long-term financial security. These behaviors require discipline and delayed gratification, but they work reliably for people willing to prioritize future security over immediate consumption. Your current financial position reflects past decisions, but your future outcomes depend on the choices you make starting today. The person retiring comfortably didn't get lucky. They consistently applied these principles over time. Which financial habit resonates most with your situation, and what specific change will you implement first? Comment below and share your biggest insight from this comparison. If this helped clarify what separates financial success from struggle, subscribe for more content about the psychology and practical strategies behind building wealth.